What if everything you've ever known, the world around you, your memories, your experiences, wasn't real in the way you think? What if this life, this reality, was just part of a complex simulation designed by beings far more advanced than ourselves? The simulation hypothesis might sound like science fiction, but more and more philosophers and scientists are considering it as a plausible explanation for the nature of our existence. What happens when we die in the simulation? Is death just a reset, a shift to another simulated world, or a doorway to a parallel universe? The idea that we might already be living in a parallel reality raises questions that challenge everything we know about life, death, and consciousness. In this chapter, we dive deep into these mind-bending ideas, exploring whether death is really the end or just the beginning of another journey in a universe beyond our understanding. Death has long been one of the greatest mysteries of life. We all know that it's inevitable, yet how many of us really understand what it means to die? It's a question that has troubled philosophers, scientists, and spiritual thinkers alike for millennia. Some believe that death is the end of everything, while others suggest that death may simply be a transition into another phase of existence. The ancient Greeks believed that death was simply the final separation of the soul from the body. Plato, for instance, argued that the soul is immortal and that death is merely a transition to another realm, where the soul continues to exist, free from the constraints of the physical body. Similarly, many Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Hinduism view death not as an end but as a passage to another existence, often in the form of reincarnation. In contrast, modern Western philosophy has often regarded death as an endpoint, the final chapter of the human experience. In existentialism, thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre have argued that death brings about an ultimate meaninglessness, a void where existence simply ceases. Yet, there remains something unsettling about this finality, something that leaves many of us seeking alternative answers. From a scientific standpoint, death is typically viewed through a biological lens. When the heart stops beating, when brain activity ceases, life ends. There is no room for metaphysical explanations, no acceptance of an afterlife or continuation of consciousness. The brain, as scientists explain, is the center of consciousness, and once it shuts down, so too does our awareness. However, some scientists, like the physicist Roger Penrose, have proposed that consciousness may not be entirely tied to the physical brain. Through theories like orchestrago or orchestrated objective reduction, Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff suggest that consciousness arises from quantum processes within the brain's microtubules, which might allow it to transcend the brain at death. While science has yet to prove the existence of an afterlife, these ideas still leave room for debate, inviting us to consider possibilities beyond a purely biological. Is it possible that consciousness continues after the body dies? Reflecting on these perspectives, I find myself caught between the philosophical and scientific camps. While I understand the scientific explanations of death, the philosophical and spiritual perspectives resonate deeply with me. Could it be that death is not the end, but rather the beginning of something else, a transition to a new form of existence? I think it's a possibility worth exploring. Throughout history, humans have sought to answer the question of life after death. Whether through religious belief, scientific theory, or philosophical inquiry, we've attempted to find meaning in our mortality. What if these theories are pointing us towards something greater than we can currently comprehend? One of the most captivating ideas in both science fiction and theoretical physics is the concept of parallel universes, the notion that our universe is not the only one. Instead, there may be countless other realities, each existing alongside our own, with different outcomes and possibilities. This concept has fascinated scientists, philosophers, and curious minds alike for centuries. But what do parallel universes actually mean, and how do they tie into the mysteries of life and death? In this chapter, we will explore the idea of parallel universes, diving into the many worlds interpretation, MWI, of quantum mechanics, one of the most popular scientific theories behind the concept. We will also take a closer look at how parallel universes are portrayed in pop culture, and how these portrayals reflect our deep-seated curiosity about what happens after death. The idea of parallel universes is not as modern as many might think. In fact, it has roots that trace back to the ancient world. Philosophers such as Democritus and Leucippus spoke of the existence of many worlds, each formed by different configurations of atoms. Fast forward to the 20th century, and the concept of parallel worlds took on a more scientific tone with the advent of quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics, the science that governs the behavior of particles on the smallest scales, introduces a bizarre and counterintuitive reality. One of the core principles of quantum mechanics is that particles do not have definite properties, such as position or velocity, until they are observed. Instead, they exist in a superposition of all possible states. But what happens when we observe them? Here's where the many worlds interpretation, MWI, of quantum mechanics comes in. Proposed by the American physicist Hugh Everett in 1957, MWI suggests that when a quantum event occurs, like the decay of an atom or the flip of a coin, the universe splits into two or more separate realities, each representing a different outcome. Imagine this: every choice we make, every random event, creates a new universe, one where the different outcomes of those events play out simultaneously. In one universe, you might have chosen chocolate cake, in another, lemon. The MWI posits that all possibilities exist in parallel, though we only experience one version of reality at any given time. As I dive deeper into the many worlds interpretation, I can't help but marvel at the sheer magnitude of possibilities it presents. The idea that every choice, every random event, spawns a new universe opens up a mind-boggling array of alternate realities. If every possible outcome exists, then doesn't that mean that every decision, however small, can create an entirely different version of reality? I find this thought incredibly liberating and, at the same time, a little unsettling. It challenges our perception of free will, suggesting that every decision we make might not be unique, but one of many paths already laid out by the universe. For example, imagine that a choice as simple as turning left or right could create a new universe. Each you would exist in a different universe, living out a different version of reality. It's like the world we know is just one page in an endless book of possibilities. What does this mean for life after death? Could our consciousness, when we die in one universe, simply shift to another version of ourselves in a different universe? Could death, in essence, be just a transition, a shift from one parallel universe to another, where a different version of ourselves continues to live? Now that we have an understanding of parallel universes, let's tie this back to the concept of death. What happens when we die in this universe? According to the many worlds interpretation, when we die, our consciousness might simply transition into another version of ourselves in a parallel universe where we didn't die. This would explain why some people have near-death experiences, NDEs, where they describe traveling through a tunnel, seeing a bright light, or feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. These experiences could be our consciousness momentarily crossing over into another version of reality. In this new universe, we continue to exist, living out a slightly different version of our lives. Perhaps we live in a world where we made a different choice, or where events unfolded differently. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That death might not be the end, but a simple shift in the fabric of our existence. If this concept of parallel universes sounds familiar, it's probably because it's frequently explored in popular culture. From TV shows like Star Trek and Doctor Who, to movies like Inception and The Matrix, the idea of alternate realities has captured the imagination of audiences worldwide. In many of these portrayals, the afterlife, or death, is often depicted as a transition to a new reality, a new universe, or a different version of ourselves. In Star Trek, for instance, the concept of parallel universes is explored through the mirror universe, where alternate versions of familiar characters exist. These universes are often shown as being drastically different, with characters making different choices that lead to an alternate path in life. Similarly, in Doctor Who, the concept of parallel universes and alternate timelines is often explored. The Doctor, a time-traveling alien, encounters various versions of reality, all of which present unique challenges and opportunities for growth. What's fascinating about these shows is that they depict death not as an end, but as a transition and opportunity to explore new realities, new versions of existence. Reflecting on these depictions of parallel universes in fiction, I find that they offer a hopeful perspective on the afterlife. While they may be works of fiction, the idea of multiple realities and the continuity of existence after death resonates with many of us. It challenges the conventional view that death is the final end, suggesting that perhaps there is more to life and death than we can currently understand. But how do we know if these portrayals are simply fantasy or if they might reflect something more real? Could the concept of parallel universes offer a glimpse into what happens after death? Could the real afterlife be a reality where our consciousness continues to live in another universe, a place where we can explore new versions of ourselves? As I reflect on the idea of parallel universes, I can't help but be awestruck by the possibilities they present. Whether through quantum mechanics or through the lens of fiction, the concept of parallel universes challenges everything we think we know about life and death. It suggests that there might be countless versions of ourselves, living out different realities, and that death could simply be a transition to another version of us alive, thriving, and existing in a different universe. For now, the mysteries of death and the afterlife remain unsolved. But the idea of parallel universes offers a fascinating possibility that death might not be an end at all, but a doorway to a new reality. A reality where we continue to explore, learn, and grow across infinite versions of existence. If the idea of parallel universes is not mind-bending enough, let's take it a step further and introduce quantum mechanics, the study of the strange behavior of particles on the tiniest scales. The thought that death might lead us to another universe isn't just the stuff of science fiction, it's grounded in some of the most baffling principles of quantum mechanics. The connections between quantum mechanics and consciousness could hold the key to answering one of humanity's oldest questions: what happens after we die? Could quantum physics explain how consciousness might survive the death of the body and transition to another reality? Let's dive into the world of quantum mechanics, where death and parallel universes might not be as far apart as they seem. At its core, quantum mechanics is a theory about how the universe works at the smallest scales, particles like atoms, electrons, and photons. Unlike the world we experience daily, where objects behave in predictable ways, quantum particles are anything but predictable. They exist in multiple states at once, and their behavior can seem utterly random or contradictory. For example, particles can be in two places at the same time, or they can act as both particles and waves, depending on how they're observed. This is called superposition, and it's one of the defining features of quantum mechanics. But here's where things get really interesting. The many worlds interpretation, MWI, of quantum mechanics, which we discussed earlier, takes this bizarre behavior and pushes it even further. According to MWI, every quantum event results in the splitting of the universe, creating two, or more, parallel realities, each representing a different outcome of that event. Imagine this: every decision you make, every random event, splits the universe into separate realities, each containing a different version of you. In one universe, you might choose chocolate cake, and in another, you choose lemon cake. These alternate realities coexist, but we can only experience one version of them at a time. But what does this have to do with death? The traditional view of consciousness is that it is a product of the brain, the result of electrical signals firing between neurons. But what if consciousness is not entirely tied to the physical body? What if it exists in a different form altogether? This is where the quantum theories of consciousness come into play. The orchestrogor theory, orchestrated objective reduction, proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, suggests that consciousness arises from quantum processes inside the brain's microtubules, tiny structures within brain cells. These quantum processes are not confined to the brain. They might extend beyond the physical boundaries of our body. Penrose believes that these quantum states might not be localized, meaning that consciousness could transcend the brain and be part of a much larger quantum field. In this view, consciousness is not just a byproduct of physical processes, but something much more fundamental, a force of nature that could continue to exist after the body ceases to function. But how does this apply to life after death? Now, let's connect the dots between quantum mechanics and death. If consciousness is indeed a quantum phenomenon, as the orchestrogor theory suggests, then it may not be bound to the brain. When the body dies, the consciousness might not simply shut off. Instead, it could transcend a body's limitations and transition to another state of existence. If the many worlds interpretation holds true, then death could be a moment where our consciousness shifts to a parallel universe, where a different version of us continues to live. Rather than the end of existence, death could be a transition to another version of reality, where everything we experienced in this life continues in some form. It's a fascinating thought. In one universe, we might die. In another, we might continue. But this doesn't mean that the version of us that died is the end of the story. Our consciousness could simply move to a different universe where we don't die, where we live out the remainder of our lives in a different timeline. As I reflect on this idea, I find it both comforting and awe-inspiring. The idea that death could simply be a shift, like turning off one light and turning on another, opens up infinite possibilities. Could it be that we are not bound to one version of reality, but are part of a vast, interconnected web of universes, where our consciousness continues to evolve in countless different forms? I've always been fascinated by the concept of consciousness and its relationship with the physical body. Quantum mechanics suggests that consciousness might not just be confined to the brain, but could be part of something far more expansive. If this is true, then the idea of death being a transition to another reality seems entirely plausible. Death wouldn't be the end of consciousness, but rather, a new beginning in a parallel world. Imagine the comfort of knowing that even if we don't experience a traditional afterlife, we might continue to exist in another universe, in another version of ourselves. It's a perspective that makes death less about an end and more about an ongoing journey through infinite realities. While the theories behind quantum mechanics and parallel universes are incredibly thought-provoking, they remain speculative. Science has yet to prove that consciousness survives death, let alone that it moves to a parallel universe. The many worlds interpretation, while popular among quantum physicists, remains just one of many possible explanations for quantum events. And although the orchestrogor theory is an intriguing take on the nature of consciousness, there's still no concrete evidence that consciousness can exist beyond the brain. But that doesn't mean these ideas aren't worth exploring. They offer us a glimpse into a reality that transcends the physical world, a world where consciousness might continue in ways we can't yet comprehend. As I continue to explore these theories, I find myself embracing the mystery of it all. The idea that consciousness might be something much greater than we currently understand offers a sense of wonder and possibility. Whether or not quantum mechanics holds the key to the afterlife, these ideas challenge us to think beyond the limits of our physical reality and consider the endless potential of existence. For me, the beauty of these quantum theories lies in their openness. They invite us to imagine a universe where anything is possible, where death might not be the end but simply a transition to another reality. And isn't that what the mysteries of life are all about? Exploring the unknown and finding meaning in the questions, even if we don't have all the answers. So, what can we take from all of this? Could death be a quantum event that leads our consciousness to a parallel universe? Could our consciousness transcend the limits of the physical body and continue in another form, in another reality? While the answers remain elusive, the idea that death could be a shift into another universe offers a comforting thought. It suggests that death is not the end but a continuation of the journey, a journey that extends far beyond the limits of our current understanding. What happens when we die? Is death the ultimate end of our consciousness, or is it merely a transition to another form of existence? This question has intrigued humanity for millennia, and while science can't yet provide definitive answers, several theories rooted in quantum mechanics, metaphysics, and spirituality offer intriguing possibilities for the continuation of consciousness after death. In this chapter, we will explore the different models that suggest consciousness might transcend the physical body at death, and how these theories could offer insights into the afterlife. These theories challenge our conventional understanding of death, offering a more expansive view of the journey beyond life. One of the most fascinating theories that suggest consciousness might persist beyond death is orchestrogor, orchestrated objective reduction, a model developed by British physicist Roger Penrose and American anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff. Orchestrogor proposes that consciousness is not just a byproduct of neural activity in the brain but arises from quantum processes that take place in the brain's microtubules, tiny structural elements within our cells. According to Orchestrogor, consciousness is a quantum phenomenon. It doesn't originate purely in the brain but rather exists in a superposition of states, interacting with quantum fields. The theory suggests that even after the body dies, consciousness might continue in some form, because it is not fully reliant on the biological processes of the brain. In fact, the quantum nature of consciousness could allow it to transcend the physical brain altogether. This opens up an intriguing possibility. If consciousness is not confined to the brain, it may not end when the body dies. Instead, it could persist in a non-local state, possibly entering a new form or transitioning to another dimension. This view aligns with many spiritual traditions that believe the soul or consciousness is eternal. As I reflect on Orchestrogor and its implications, I can't help but feel a sense of wonder. The idea that consciousness is not bound by the physical brain offers a sense of freedom, as if our minds could exist beyond the limits of our bodies. This theory resonates with me because it suggests that the self, the consciousness that experiences life, is far more expansive than we typically understand. I've often thought about how consciousness is more than just a collection of neurons firing in the brain. It feels more profound, almost as though it's connected to something greater than the physical world. Orchestrogor gives a scientific framework to this idea, suggesting that consciousness may indeed continue to exist in a quantum field even after death. If this is true, then death might be nothing more than a transition, a shift in the nature of consciousness, rather than its end. Another thought-provoking theory comes from Robert Lanza, a prominent American scientist and physician who proposed the theory of biocentrism. In his book, Biocentrism: How Life and Biology Are the Keys to Understanding the Universe, Lanza presents the radical idea that life itself creates the universe, rather than the other way around. In the biocentric view, reality is not a fixed, objective thing, but rather a construct shaped by our perception and consciousness. Our experiences of time and space are not absolute, they are shaped by the mind. Death, in this context, is not the end of consciousness, but a transformation. When we die, consciousness could simply adapt to a different form, continuing to exist in a different spatial-temporal dimension. In essence, biocentrism proposes that because life and consciousness are the fundamental drivers of reality, they do not cease to exist when the body dies. Instead, life and consciousness could continue to evolve, adapting to new realities beyond the physical world. Death, in this theory, is merely a shift, a new beginning. I find Lanza's biocentrism deeply compelling. It challenges our conventional view of the universe as something that exists independently of us. The idea that life and consciousness are the creators of the universe gives a new depth to the concept of existence. If life is indeed the creator of reality, then death might be less of a termination and more of a transition where consciousness moves into a new form or reality, shaped by the very nature of life itself. This perspective aligns with my own musings on consciousness. I've often wondered whether the universe is really as fixed as we perceive it to be. Could our perceptions, our minds, actually shape the reality around us? If so, then death might simply be a transformation of consciousness into another form, a new chapter in an ongoing journey. A related theory that also suggests consciousness may survive death comes from the holographic universe model, proposed by physicists Gerard T. Hooft and Leonard Susskind. According to this theory, the universe is not a three-dimensional reality but a two-dimensional projection of information encoded on the surface of a higher dimensional space. Essentially, everything we experience as real is just a hologram, a projection of deeper, fundamental information. The holographic principle challenges our understanding of physical space and time. If consciousness is part of this holographic universe, it might not be bound by the physical world at all. When we die, our consciousness could move to another level of existence, one beyond the physical world. In this context, death might not be an end, but simply a shift in the projection of consciousness. The idea that consciousness could exist beyond the physical realm is both profound and liberating. It suggests that we are not merely physical beings trapped in a body, but rather projections of a deeper, universal consciousness that transcends time and space. Death, in this sense, could be nothing more than a change in the way our consciousness is projected into a new form, a new dimension, or a new reality. Reflecting on the holographic universe theory, I find myself drawn to the idea that consciousness might not be limited to our physical bodies. The notion that we are projections of a deeper, universal consciousness offers a profound sense of interconnectedness with the universe. If death is merely a shift in how our consciousness is projected, then the idea of an afterlife becomes much more plausible. To me, this theory suggests that death is not something to fear, but rather something to embrace as part of the larger cycle of existence. It opens up the possibility that consciousness continues, not in the way we imagine, but in a new, expansive form beyond the physical world and beyond the limits of time. As we explore these theories, orchestrogor, biocentrism, and the holographic universe, one thing becomes clear: the nature of consciousness is far more mysterious and expansive than we could have ever imagined. While science has yet to provide concrete proof, these theories offer tantalizing possibilities for what might happen after we die. Whether consciousness transitions to another universe, continues in a different form, or adapts to a new reality, the idea that death is not the end but a continuation of the journey is a deeply comforting thought. As I ponder these possibilities, I feel a sense of awe and wonder. Perhaps the afterlife is not a place, but a state of being, a transition into another dimension of existence. And while we may never fully understand what happens after we die, we can take comfort in the knowledge that our consciousness may continue in ways that transcend the physical limits of the body. There's something magical about the idea of lucid dreaming. The concept of becoming aware of your dreams while still inside them, and even having the power to control what happens within that dream world, is nothing short of fascinating. But what if lucid dreaming isn't just an interesting mental state? What if it offers us a glimpse into something far deeper, perhaps even a portal into other realms, or parallel universes, where consciousness continues beyond the body? In this chapter, we will explore the connection between lucid dreaming, consciousness, and the multiverse. Is it possible that lucid dreaming provides us with a preview of the afterlife, or could it be an entry point into parallel universes? Let's dive into the world of dreams and see what they might tell us about the nature of consciousness and the continuation of the self. Lucid dreaming is the experience of becoming aware that you are dreaming while still within the dream. Once the dreamer realizes they are in a dream, they can often control the events, the environment, and sometimes even their own actions within the dream. It's like a kind of wakefulness inside a sleeping mind, a state where the dreamer can shape their dream world at will. The key feature of lucid dreams is awareness. The dreamer understands that what they are experiencing isn't real in the traditional sense, but still feels incredibly vivid and immersive. This awareness can sometimes lead to a profound sense of freedom, where the dreamer is no longer bound by the usual rules of reality. They can fly, change their environment, or meet dream figures, often with a sense of limitless possibility. But could lucid dreaming also provide us with insights into the nature of consciousness itself? In many ways, lucid dreaming offers a unique perspective on the nature of consciousness. When we are awake, we experience the world through our five senses, and our awareness is tied to our physical body and surroundings. But in a lucid dream, consciousness appears to transcend a body. The dreamer's awareness is separate from their physical reality, yet they can still interact with it in a meaningful way. This idea of consciousness existing outside the body is similar to the theories we've explored in quantum mechanics and the multiverse. If consciousness is not confined to the physical brain, then it might be capable of existing in other dimensions or realities. Lucid dreaming could be a practice run for what happens when the body dies, where the mind, or consciousness, continues to experience and explore new realms, even though the physical body has stopped functioning. Lucid dreaming allows the mind to step outside the boundaries of the body and the physical world, exploring new possibilities and new realities. It's almost as if the dreamer's consciousness is able to shift to a different state of existence, one that is not bound by the physical constraints of space and time. If consciousness can do this while we sleep, might it be able to do the same when we die? Could lucid dreaming be a kind of preview of the afterlife? When we die, we leave behind our physical bodies, but if consciousness is separate from the body, as some theories suggest, then where does it go? One possibility is that consciousness moves to another form of existence in afterlife, or perhaps a parallel universe where we continue to exist in some way. Lucid dreams often have a feeling of freedom, as if the dreamer is no longer bound by the limitations of the physical world. In a lucid dream, we can encounter places we've never been, interact with people we've never met, and sometimes experience a sense of timelessness. These experiences share similarities with descriptions of the afterlife experiences where the boundaries of time, space, and reality are no longer rigid. Many people who have near-death experiences, NDEs, report seeing a bright light, traveling down a tunnel, or meeting deceased loved ones. While the scientific community often attributes these experiences to neurological phenomena, they share striking similarities with lucid dreams. Could it be that both lucid dreams and NDEs are reflections of a deeper truth that consciousness can move beyond a body, whether during sleep or after death? When I reflect on my own experiences with lucid dreaming, I can't help but feel a sense of wonder at the possibilities it presents. Lucid dreaming offers a rare opportunity to explore the nature of consciousness without the constraints of the physical world. There's something deeply liberating about knowing that, in a dream, I can do anything from flying to experiencing a different version of reality. I often wonder if lucid dreams might be more than just vivid mental experiences. Could they be a bridge between our current reality and other realities, perhaps even parallel universes? In lucid dreams, I've experienced moments of profound clarity, where everything seems interconnected, and I feel deeply aware of my own existence beyond a body. These moments make me question whether the sense of awareness could persist after physical death. If lucid dreaming is a glimpse into what it's like to transcend a body, then maybe it's not so far-fetched to believe that consciousness could continue in another universe or form after we die. The fluidity of lucid dreams where anything is possible makes me think that death could be the ultimate lucid dream, where we shift into a new reality, still aware, still conscious, and still part of the greater web of existence. One of the most exciting possibilities that lucid dreaming offers is the potential connection to parallel universes. If the many worlds interpretation, MWI, of quantum mechanics holds true, every decision and every event creates a new universe where different outcomes play out. Could lucid dreaming be a way for our consciousness to access these parallel worlds? In a lucid dream, the dreamer has the power to create and alter the dream world. What if, in a similar way, our consciousness could access other versions of reality after death? Imagine being able to choose which universe to enter, just as a lucid dreamer chooses the direction of their dream. The idea that we could consciously move between parallel realities after death opens up a universe of possibilities, literally. For many, the idea of parallel universes is a comforting one. It suggests that the choices we make, the lives we lead, and even the deaths we experience are just part of an ongoing journey through an infinite number of possibilities. Lucid dreaming, in this context, might offer us a glimpse into what it's like to explore those infinite possibilities. As I think about all the potential worlds and realities that might exist beyond this one, I can't help but feel a sense of excitement. The idea that consciousness could exist in parallel universes, and that we might have the ability to explore them through lucid dreams or in the afterlife, is exhilarating. It makes me wonder if death isn't something to fear but something to embrace, like stepping into a new adventure in an entirely new reality. Lucid dreaming offers us a way to practice exploring other realms, to step outside of the confines of our current understanding of reality. The more I learn about lucid dreaming and its connection to consciousness, the more I begin to see it as a gateway, perhaps not just to other worlds, but to the deeper understanding of who we are and what we are capable of as conscious beings. Lucid dreaming has the potential to reveal much about the nature of consciousness, death, and the afterlife. Could our ability to control our dreams be a reflection of our ability to transition to a new reality after death? Could lucid dreams be a preview of the journey our consciousness takes when we leave the physical body behind? The possibilities are endless, and as we continue to explore the connection between lucid dreaming and parallel universes, we may find that the answers to life's greatest mysteries are closer than we think. Whether through quantum mechanics, near-death experiences, or the transformative power of lucid dreams, the idea that consciousness can exist beyond the body offers hope for a future where death is not the end, but simply the beginning of a new chapter in an infinite journey. If you've ever watched a science fiction film, read a fantasy novel, or even binge-watched a TV show, chances are you've encountered the concept of parallel universes. Whether it's a film about multiverses or a show that explores life after death, popular culture has a fascination with these ideas. What's interesting is that these portrayals often do more than entertain. They reflect the way we, as a society, are grappling with the mystery of death, consciousness, and the potential for other realms of existence. In this chapter, we will explore how parallel universes and death are depicted in pop culture, and what these portrayals reveal about our collective understanding of these deep mysteries. From iconic films like The Matrix to TV shows like Doctor Who, these stories may hold clues to how we see life after death and the possibility of infinite realities. One of the most well-known and influential movies that explores the concept of parallel universes and life after death is The Matrix, 1999, written and directed by the Wachowski siblings. The film follows Neo, a hacker who discovers that the world he perceives as real is, in fact, a simulated reality created by machines to keep humanity subdued while their bodies are used as an energy source. At its core, The Matrix asks profound questions about the nature of reality. How do we know what's real? What happens when we wake up from the illusion? The movie's famous line, "What is real?" captures the essence of the philosophical and metaphysical questions that have preoccupied thinkers for centuries. But beyond the question of reality, The Matrix also explores themes of transcendence and awakening. Neo's journey is not just one of discovering the truth about the world, but also about embracing the idea that consciousness can break free from physical constraints. In the film, when Neo dies in the simulated world, he is reborn with a greater understanding of his abilities. He becomes aware of the system's rules and is able to manipulate them at will. This mirrors the idea of death being a transition to another state of existence, a sort of awakening from one reality to another. The movie suggests that death, or the ending of the simulation, doesn't truly signify the end, but rather a shift in the understanding of who we are and what we can do. Reflecting on The Matrix, I see it as an allegory for our own struggles with reality and consciousness. How often do we find ourselves stuck in the illusion of daily life, believing that this is all there is? And what happens when we confront the possibility that reality is far more complex than we ever imagined? In many ways, The Matrix represents the existential journey that all of us face, the desire to wake up from the constraints of the physical world and discover something greater about ourselves and the universe. It aligns with the idea that consciousness might transcend the physical body, moving into a new realm or even a new universe, much like the way Neo enters the real world after awakening from the Matrix. Another iconic series that explores the concept of parallel universes and the afterlife is Doctor Who. This British sci-fi show has been on the air since 1963 and has fascinated audiences with its imaginative depictions of time travel, alternate realities, and the concept of death and rebirth. The Doctor, an ancient alien known as a Time Lord, has the ability to travel through time and space in the TARDIS, a time machine that looks like a phone booth. The show's premise is built around the idea of infinite possibilities, alternate timelines, parallel universes, and multiple versions of reality. Death and resurrection are recurring themes, with the Doctor constantly regenerating into new bodies after dying, a process that enables him to live indefinitely. The show explores the fluidity of identity and existence. Even though the Doctor dies in one form, the consciousness moves on, continuing in a new form, with the memories of past lives intact. This idea that the Doctor is reborn, yet continues to be the same person in essence, challenges the conventional understanding of death. In this sense, Doctor Who posits that death is not an end but a transformation, one that leads to new forms of existence, just as our consciousness might continue in another universe after physical death. Doctor Who offers a fascinating perspective on death, one that isn't bound by the traditional finality we associate with it. The Doctor's ability to regenerate suggests that death is not something to be feared, but a natural part of a continuous journey. It mirrors the idea that consciousness, or the essence of who we are, isn't limited to one life or one body. In many ways, I find the Doctor's regenerations to be a powerful metaphor for life itself. As we go through our own experiences, we die in some ways, whether through the end of a chapter in life, a relationship, or even in personal growth. And yet, like the Doctor, we are reborn in different forms, moving forward with new perspectives and understanding. Perhaps death, like the Doctor's regeneration, is merely a transformation. Our consciousness may continue in another form, evolving, expanding, and experiencing new realities along the way. One more piece of popular culture that delves into the nature of consciousness and the afterlife is Inception, 2010, directed by Christopher Nolan. The film explores the concept of dreams within dreams, blurring the line between reality and illusion. The protagonist, Dom Cobb, is a thief who enters people's dreams to steal secrets. As the film progresses, the question of what constitutes real becomes increasingly complex, leading to the idea that our minds might not be as grounded in reality as we think. The film culminates in a powerful scene involving Cobb's spinning top. This top is a totem, an object that tells him whether he is in a dream or in the real world. The final scene leaves the question unresolved: is Cobb in the real world, or is he still dreaming? This ambiguity raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness and reality. Is there any way to truly know if we are in the real world, or are we just in another layer of a dream, a simulation, or a parallel universe? In a way, Inception explores the same themes as The Matrix, that reality is not always what we think it is, and consciousness may be capable of shifting between different levels of existence, whether those exist in a dream world, a simulated reality, or a parallel universe. As I think about Inception, I find myself reflecting on the complexity of reality and the role of consciousness in shaping it. Just as Cobb struggles to determine whether he is awake or dreaming, we too wrestle with the question of what's real. If consciousness can exist in multiple forms, whether in a dream, a parallel universe, or an alternate version of ourselves, then what does it really mean to be alive? The uncertainty surrounding Cobb's fate in Inception mirrors our own uncertainty about the afterlife. If we can't even be sure if we are awake in this reality, how can we be certain what happens after death? Perhaps the answer lies in the idea that death, like the ending of a dream, is not the end of consciousness, but a transition to another level of existence, a new reality, a new version of ourselves. From The Matrix to Doctor Who to Inception, popular culture has been reflecting our deepest questions about death, consciousness, and parallel universes for decades. These portrayals offer us more than just entertainment. They provide insights into our collective understanding of the mysteries that lie beyond a physical world. They suggest that death might not be the end, but a transition, an awakening, or a regeneration into a new form. As we continue to explore these ideas, it's clear that pop culture doesn't just serve as a mirror of our current beliefs, but also as a window into the future possibilities of existence. Whether we're talking about parallel universes, simulations, or the afterlife, these stories challenge us to rethink the limits of reality and to consider that there might be far more to our existence than we can currently imagine. Near-death experiences, NDEs, have captivated human imagination for centuries. Many people who have come close to death, only to be revived, report experiences that are often strikingly similar: bright lights, a feeling of peace, encounters with deceased loved ones, and even life reviews. These shared experiences have led some to believe that NDEs provide a glimpse of what lies beyond this life, a doorway to another reality. But what if these experiences aren't just a product of the brain shutting down? What if they are actually glimpses into parallel universes or alternate versions of reality? Could it be that when we die, our consciousness shifts into a different universe, where life continues in a new form? In this chapter, we will explore the fascinating phenomenon of NDEs, their common themes, and what they might suggest about the afterlife, consciousness, and the possibility of parallel universes. Near-death experiences, NDEs, are reported by people who have come close to death, often due to medical emergencies, accidents, or other life-threatening events. While every experience is unique, there are common themes that emerge across many NDEs. Some of the most frequently reported features include the bright light. Many individuals describe moving toward or being enveloped by a bright, warm light. This light is often described as peaceful, comforting, and even divine. Out-of-body experiences. Some people report a sensation of floating above their bodies, observing the scene around them from a detached perspective. This often includes witnessing medical teams trying to revive them. Meeting deceased loved ones. A common element of NDEs is encountering people who have already passed away: family members, friends, or even spiritual figures. These encounters are often described as peaceful and loving. Life review. Another frequent experience is a life review, where individuals see important events in their lives flash before their eyes, sometimes feeling an overwhelming sense of understanding or resolution. Feelings of peace and timelessness. Many report a profound sense of peace, love, and freedom from pain. There's often a feeling of being unbound by time or space. Everything feels timeless. The intensity of these experiences has led some to conclude that they are not simply hallucinations caused by the brain shutting down, but rather, authentic experiences of another realm or existence. Could NDEs be glimpses of a parallel universe, or even a higher dimension of existence? As I reflect on the accounts of NDEs, I'm struck by the common themes of transcendence. There seems to be a shared experience of moving beyond the physical body and entering a realm where time and space no longer have the same rules. It's almost as though the person's consciousness has shifted into a different state of being, free from the limitations of the physical world. I find it fascinating that so many individuals report a sense of peace, a sense of being connected to something greater than themselves. It reminds me of the themes we've explored earlier in the context of parallel universes and quantum mechanics, the idea that consciousness may not be bound by the body, and that death could simply be a shift into a new form or reality. What if these experiences aren't just stories of individuals dying and returning to life, but rather glimpses of what happens when consciousness transitions from one universe to another? If we are truly part of a vast multiverse, as quantum physics suggests, then NDEs could be the moments when our consciousness briefly slips into a parallel reality, before being drawn back to our own. One of the most profound elements of many NDEs is the life review. This is the experience where individuals are shown important moments from their lives, often in an accelerated and deeply emotional way. Some people describe reliving key moments, feeling the impact of their actions on others, or even experiencing their life from the perspective of others. This life review could be interpreted as a form of cross-dimensional awareness and insight into the deeper fabric of reality. If consciousness exists beyond the physical body, then perhaps the life review isn't just a mental construct but a glimpse into how our actions reverberate through time and across parallel universes. For example, in a parallel universe, the same person might have made different choices, taking a different job, moving to a different city, or forming different relationships. The life review could be showing them the consequences of these parallel paths, offering a deeper understanding of how their existence fits into the grander scheme of the multiverse. When I think about the life review, I'm reminded of the way we sometimes reflect on our own lives, considering the paths we've chosen and the impact of our decisions. We all have those moments where we wonder what might have happened if we had taken a different turn. The life review in NDE seems like a powerful way to not only understand the past but also glimpse the vastness of possibility that exists within the multiverse. Could it be that, when we die, we don't simply reflect on this one life, but instead, we see the entirety of our existence across multiple realities, every version of ourselves that has lived out a different choice or path? This idea brings a sense of depth to the afterlife, suggesting that our consciousness is part of something much larger than we can comprehend. In many ways, the life review offers a glimpse of what it might be like to see the interconnectedness of all things, to experience every version of ourselves across infinite realities. What if death isn't an end but a way of understanding the full scope of our existence in the multiverse? So, what do NDEs tell us about the afterlife and the possibility of parallel universes? While science hasn't been able to conclusively explain these experiences, they do suggest that consciousness is capable of existing outside the body, and that death might not be the end. Instead, it could be a transition to another form of existence, one where we continue our journey in a new reality, a new universe, or a new dimension. The common themes of peace, light, and a life review point to the possibility that consciousness doesn't simply cease to exist when the body dies. Instead, it might shift to a different version of reality, just as quantum mechanics suggests that every choice we make creates a new parallel universe. Could NDEs be glimpses of this other reality? Are they moments when our consciousness slips between worlds, experiencing a brief moment of another life or a different version of ourselves? These questions remain unanswered, but they open up the exciting possibility that death is not the end of consciousness, but a transition into an infinite array of parallel universes, where our journey continues. As we explore the phenomenon of near-death experiences, one thing becomes clear: consciousness may not be as tied to the physical body as we once thought. Whether NDEs are glimpses of an afterlife, a shift into parallel universes, or simply a manifestation of the brain's final moments, they suggest that death is not the end but a transformation, and opportunity for consciousness to continue in a new form, in a new reality. For me, NDEs are a profound reminder of the infinite possibilities that exist beyond this world. If consciousness can move beyond the body during an NDE, then perhaps it can continue after death, shifting into a new universe, a new version of reality. And while we may never fully understand the true nature of death, NDEs offer us a glimpse of the boundless potential that lies beyond the physical world, a reminder that our journey doesn't end, but simply takes on new dimensions. What if everything you know, the world you see, the experiences you have, and even the thoughts you think are simply part of an incredibly sophisticated simulation? This isn't the plot of a science fiction movie, but rather a legitimate philosophical and scientific question posed by one of the most famous thinkers of the modern era, Nick Bostrom. In this chapter, we will explore the simulation hypothesis, a theory that suggests our entire universe might be a computer-generated simulation created by a far more advanced civilization. Could this simulated world be a parallel universe itself? And what happens when we wake up from the simulation? What if the afterlife is simply an exit from one reality to another, a shift from a simulation to a different version of existence? Let's dive into the digital frontier and explore what the simulation hypothesis could mean for our understanding of reality and the afterlife. The simulation hypothesis is the idea that all of reality, including the Earth and the universe, might be an artificial simulation created by a higher form of intelligence. This theory suggests that the world as we perceive it is not real in the traditional sense, but instead is a virtual reality created by some sort of advanced technology. The idea was popularized by philosopher Nick Bostrom, who proposed that one of the following must be true. Human civilization will go extinct before reaching a level of technological maturity capable of running simulations of conscious beings. If such a civilization does reach that level, they will have no interest in running simulations of their ancestors. We are almost certainly living in a simulation. Bostrom's argument is based on the premise that once a civilization becomes sufficiently advanced, they could create simulations indistinguishable from reality. These simulations could be used to model everything from historical events to entire universes. If they can run one simulation, they could run billions, with each simulation containing its own versions of life and consciousness. If this is the case, the universe as we know it might not be the only one. Instead, we might be one of many parallel simulations, each running a different version of reality. And if these simulations exist, is it possible that death is simply a glitch or reset in the program, an event that shifts us from one simulated world to another? The simulation hypothesis challenges our fundamental understanding of what it means to be real. If the universe we experience is a simulation, then everything we think we know about reality could be an illusion. Our perceptions, the laws of physics, and even the passage of time might simply be part of the code that governs the simulation. Just like the characters in a video game, we would be bound by the rules programmed into the system, unaware of the greater reality outside the simulation. One key feature of this idea is that consciousness, the experience of being and having thoughts, may also be a product of simulation. If we are, in fact, conscious beings within a digital environment, it's possible that our consciousness is being simulated as well. This leads to a profound question. If our consciousness is artificially created, where does it go when the simulation ends? Could death, in this context, be a shutdown or restart process? When the simulation ends, do we move into another world or reality, just as a computer program might reload or transition to a new version? This concept aligns with the idea of parallel universes. Each simulation could represent a different universe, and death might be the moment when one simulation ends and another begins. As I reflect on the simulation hypothesis, I find myself questioning the very nature of my own existence. What if the world I experience every day, the relationships I have, the choices I make, and the very sensations I feel are not real, but just the result of an incredibly complex program? It's a thought that can be both exhilarating and unsettling. But at the same time, the idea of living in a simulation isn't necessarily depressing. If our world is a simulation, it suggests that consciousness can exist outside the physical realm, that it can transcend the limitations of time, space, and material existence. In a sense, we might already be living in a form of parallel universe, an alternate reality crafted by a higher intelligence. This perspective changes the way I view death. In the context of a simulation, death might not be the end of our consciousness but simply a transition to another version of reality. Perhaps, after we die, we simply shift to a new simulated world, a new version of ourselves, in a never-ending cycle of simulations that could continue indefinitely. What if the afterlife is simply a transition from one simulation to another? In a video game, when a player dies, they may lose a life, but they can also respawn in a new location or with a new character. Could death be a similar process in the simulation, a reset or a reboot that takes us to another world or version of ourselves? In this view, death isn't an end, but a change in the program. When we die, our consciousness could be transported to a new simulated reality, where a different version of our life plays out. This would be akin to a parallel universe, where every choice and every action leads to a new simulation of reality. We wouldn't be bound by the laws of nature in any one universe. Instead, we could move through infinite possibilities, each governed by its own rules. The beauty of the simulation hypothesis is that it suggests that death might not be the end of the self, but a continuous transition into new forms of existence. In a way, it proposes that life itself is a simulation, a process where we explore the vast potential of parallel realities, each offering a new experience and a new version of who we are. As I reflect on the idea of death as a transition in a simulated reality, I feel both a sense of relief and excitement. It offers a radically different view of the afterlife, one where death isn't something to fear, but something to embrace. If we are living in a simulation, then death is not the end of our journey, but simply a new beginning in another simulated reality. The concept of parallel universes within the simulation gives me a sense of infinite possibilities. Just like in a lucid dream, where the dreamer can explore new worlds and experiences, the idea that our consciousness could shift to a new universe after death is an exhilarating thought. The idea that we might live on in countless parallel realities, each offering new experiences and new opportunities, reminds me that existence is far more expansive than I ever imagined. As we explore the simulation hypothesis, it becomes clear that the nature of reality and what happens after death is far more complex than we could have imagined. If we are indeed living in a simulation, then death might not be the end, but simply a transition to another parallel reality, where consciousness continues in a new form. The idea that we could exist in multiple simulated worlds, moving from one to the next, opens up a world of possibilities. While the simulation hypothesis is still speculative, it offers a fascinating way to think about the afterlife and parallel universes. Whether we are living in a simulation or not, the concept challenges us to rethink the limits of reality and consciousness, and to embrace the infinite potential that exists beyond the physical world. Death may not be the final ending, it could be the beginning of an eternal journey through infinite realities, each more complex and exciting than the last. As we explore the simulation hypothesis and the possibility that our reality might be nothing more than a sophisticated simulation, it becomes clear that the nature of life, death, and consciousness is far more mysterious than we could ever imagine. If death is just a transition to another version of reality, what does that say about our existence? Could we really be living in multiple parallel universes at once? The possibilities are endless, and as we continue to explore the mysteries of the afterlife and parallel realities, one thing is certain: the truth might be even stranger than fiction. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the simulation hypothesis and want to keep exploring mind-bending ideas like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on new content from the Lucid Dream portal. We'll keep digging into the mysteries of the universe and bring you more thought-provoking content each week. Stay curious, and let's continue exploring the unknown together.